Hey guys, Sam here at NA Studios. Today I want to take you through 5 bus processing tips using the Slate Digital All Access Pass. Now you can get a free month of this right away on slatedigital.com. I would urge you to check it out. I use these plugins on every single mix. I'm going to show you how you can get a great amount more punch out of your mix. Here's a quick before and after.
Oh, it takes a man to know when something's done. I come to you like I'm the only one. You come and go. Life is not a one-act show. It's not over till I'm done.
Now, one of my all-time favourite plugins from Slate Digital is Bomber. This is kind of like a transient design with a load of other magic mixed in. I don't know what the hell it is, but it sounds great. And I love to use it on a drum bus, but specifically on like a punch bus. So I've set up a drum bomb bus here, as I'm calling it. And then I've got virtual mix rack with an EQ and bomber within it. So what I'm doing with the EQ, I'm taking out some of the bottom end at 60 Hertz. I don't want too much bottom end coming into this plugin to kind of throw bomber off. And then I've got the drive all the way up. I'm going to send some of my kick and my snare into this plugin, and it's going to create so much punch. So I've created a send over here, and this is a bomb send. So if I just solo this drum bomb bus for a moment, watch the meter as I do this. I'm aiming to hit this bomb symbol here. That's kind of the sweet spot for this plugin. I've got it soloed. Let's bring in some kick. Cool, we're just hitting that bomb. I'm going to do the same for the snare. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to listen to my drum mix in its entirety. No guitars, no bass or anything. I'm just going to bring up this drum bomb fader and you're going to hear the punch come through so much better. Right about there is the sweet spot. I've got so much more punch and clarity coming through. Let's take a listen to it before and after and see what that's actually adding. Awesome, I love that. That's really going to help your drums punch through a busy mix. It's going to get through that wall of guitar that we've kind of got in this hard rock kind of song, and it's going to help you so much. But now we've got that punch there, I kind of feel like the drums are missing a little bit of cohesion. It kind of feels like they're a little bit separate, which brings me on to number 2. I'm going to go to the brand new MOTT plugin to use some upward compression. For this plugin, let's not talk about what it's doing first off. Let's take a listen to it and then we're going to dig in. I'm on the advanced mode here so I can really tailor the attack and release and the individual bands. I can really get stuck into this. Let's take a listen to how it sounded before and then when we've got this plugin in the chain. So that upward compression, what it's doing is it's not doing what a typical compressor would do. Typically a compressor would take down the louder parts and it would compress those. An upward compressor though is taking the quieter bits and it's bringing them up. It's doing them fairly aggressively here. So I'm going to go over to my amount control. I'm going to bring it all the way down, and then as I gradually bring it up, we're going to hear that cohesion come into the kit. I'm going to solo just a verse so we can hear this. Let's take this all the way down and then gradually bring it up. And we're going to hear that drum kit just come together. It's no longer just individual kick, snare and cymbals. It's one whole kit, and that's exactly what this drum kit needs. Straight away, it's adding some cohesion to that kit. I'm noticing that I'm clipping on the input and output though, so just to remedy that, I've just got these handy input and output controls here. I'm going to make it so I'm not going into the red because I feel like that's affecting the sound just a little bit. Let's bring down the input gain so that we're not going into the red on our meter here. I'm at plus 2.95, so let's bring it down to minus 3.5 just so we're safe. And then we might find that the clipping on the output actually goes as well. So what that's doing is it's upwardly compressing the quieter parts of the kit. With a downward compressor, we're bringing down the transients. With an upward compressor, we're bringing up the quieter stuff. We're going to get more roomy, we're going to get more of the tail of the kit. And that's exactly what I needed here. If I feel like I'm doing a bit too much, I can bring down that amount control. If I feel like I'm not doing enough, I can bring that up, and it's kind of like a parallel blend. If I do feel like I'm doing too much and I'm making it too roomy, then I've got my handy bomber fader. And I can bring up just the punch of that kit using one fader, and then I can bring up the overall roominess and the overall tail of the kit using this amount fader. So two controls that are going to govern the sound of your kit. You've got a punch fader and you've got a roominess and tail fader. Super important for drums and so handy to have those two elements just on two faders. All right, now we've got the drums nice and punchy, I want to take a look at the rest of the rhythm sections. This is going to be the bass guitar. Now, in Virtual Mix Rack, we have two unbelievable plugins, Earth and Air. Now, these are going to help us get some great bottom end and some top end, and we need to tune these around the frequency content of the actual instrument. Now, these are kind of harmonic devices, and they're going to just amplify what is there as opposed to adding anything extra in, which in this case is going to be really interesting in the bass guitar. Let's take a look at Earth to start off with. Now, Earth over here, I've got set up pretty high. I'm just going to take that back down to 0. The frequency, I like to set this just above the resonant frequency that I'm kind of working in. So in this case, the song is in C sharp. So I know that a C sharp is down at around 69 Hertz. So I'm going to bring that low cut up to around 77. And that means that we're going to be letting 69 Hertz, that real low end, kind of come through and just gently roll off at around that area. Now, the way this works is you can set up your Q, and this is like at the slope. So if you have it all the way to the right, it's going to be super resonant, and you're going to really boost that area that you've set here. So this is around 77, remember. If you come down to the far left-hand side, it's going to be a really gentle slope. And you can think of the left-hand side as being kind of a take away the bass, and the right-hand side as being a bring up loads and loads of bass around that frequency that you've set. So bearing in mind I've set it around the resonant frequency, I've set it around that 69, 70 Hertz. Let's start bringing this up and see what it's going to do to that bottom end. It's added loads and loads of body. As I was bringing it up from the left to the right, you were hearing that low cut kind of disappear a little bit. And as you get past 12 o'clock, you're starting to boost that bottom end from where you've set it. You can also bring up the main dial, and that's going to bring up or bring down the overall amount of low end. Let's see if we can just bring in a touch more real girth, real earthy low end. I love it. That's solidifying that bottom end so well, and that's going to fit in nicely with the drums, with the two processes that we've just added. But I feel like in a metal track, in a hard rock track, we need that aggression. We need that top end. It was recorded through a bass with new strings, and I want to hear those new strings. I want to hear that top end clank. So I'm going to go over to my air module here. Same thing, I'm going to bring that down to 0, and I'm just going to bring all the way over to the left-hand side, and that's going to, again, bring the low pass filter or a high cut filter, and it's going to make it so that it's quite aggressive. As I bring it more to the right-hand side, it's going to start to amplify, harmonically amplify that top end. Let's take a listen to that now and exactly what it's doing. I've got this set up at 13.9, kind of 14K. There's nothing really useful in the bass above that area, so I don't need to add anything above that. As I bring it from left to right, you're going to hear that top end clank just start to shine and shimmer. And that is going to cut through a mix really well. Nice. I think I want to add a bit more overall top end, and this big knob at the top, this is where I'm going to do it. Let's take a listen and just gradually bring this knob up, and we're going to hear that shimmer come in. Amazing. That is going to cut through so well. Let's hear it before any of that and then after. Absolutely night and day. And importantly here, I've got these two modules after my virtual channel, my saturation, and after my compression as well. I don't want to add all that top and bottom end going into the compressor. I want to do it after. I want to level my sound off first with my compressor and then add it to the overall leveled sound. And that is going to give us a super fat, tight, punchy bass sound for our mix. Next, I want to take a listen to the most important part of any mix, and that is the vocal. Specifically in this case, I'm going to listen to the chorus vocal, and that's for one very good reason, which I'll come on to in a moment. Now, I'm going to use MetaTune for this, and I'm not going to use the tuning algorithm in it. I'm going to take the tuning amount all the way down to 0, and what we have left in this plugin is a fantastic doubler. I love to bring in this doubler in choruses just to add some extra width and extra dimension. I want you to take a listen to this vocal before the doubler and then after, and you're going to hear it just come to life. It's going to spread. It sounds unbelievable. Check it out.
Oh, it takes a man to know when something's done. I clung to you like I'm the only one. They come and go, but life is not a one-act show. It's not over till I'm done.
That brings it to life so much, and it adds that kind of ethereal sheen to it. Now in this instance, in this particular mix, I've got my vocals for the chorus just on their own track. Here they are, Vox Chorus. So it's only going to be applied to the chorus. You could do this through automation. You could just bring up that doubling effect just in the chorus, and it means that you're going to get that light and shade between the verse and the chorus. You want to keep it off in the verses, and then when it all kicks in for the chorus, the vocal spreads, the vocal doubles, and you get this amazing texture, which really separates those sections. Unbelievable. I love it. Finally, for number 5, I want to show you 3 plugins that live on my mix bus. These are always going to be the last things in my chain, whatever I do. If I'm mastering it myself, I'm going to dig in a little bit more. If I'm sending it away to a mastering engineer, I'm going to tame these back a little bit, but they're always going to live there. This is what they are. First off, I've got Virtual Tape Machine, and this is on the 1/2" 2-track, bias set to normal, speed set to 30 inches per second, and I'm just tailoring the input and output so that I'm not clipping too much. Let's take a listen to the mix with this plugin enabled and then without it.
Oh, it takes a man to know when something's done. I clung to you like I'm the only one. They come and go, but life is not a one-act show. It's not over till I'm done.
How one plugin can add that amount of cohesion, that amount of low end, that amount of just awesomeness is beyond me. It sounds so good. It always lives on my master bus. In this mix, I'm not actually using the Virtual Tape Machine on all of my tracks. I'm just using it on the master, and it sounds fantastic. But following that, I've got a virtual mix rack. Now this has got a couple of plugins in it. I've got the virtual console channel on the large majority of my tracks, and I tend to favour the Neve sound because this has got a really nice bottom end to it. And that is then going into Bomber. Again, I do like Bomber. It's fantastic. It's one of those that, although I'm not entirely sure what it does, I just kind of dial it in a little bit, bring up the drive knob until it's hitting that bomb, and it's just the sweet spot. It adds so much clarity, it adds some punch. In this instance, I'm on the fat setting. 9 times out of 10, that is where it's going to live. And then I've got the custom series equalizer, adding some bottom end and some top end and a little bit of bite around that 7K area. If I'm sending this off to be mastered, I'm not necessarily going to add these or quite as much, but in this instance, God, it's just adding so much to the cymbals, so much to the bottom end. Let's take a listen with this plugin not enabled and then hear it how it should sound with it in.
Oh, it takes a man to know when something's done. I clung to you like I'm the only one. You come and go, but life is not a one-night show. It's not over till I'm done.
It just sounds so good. It's adding some real clarity to it. It's adding some top end. It's adding some low end. And that's even without the virtual tape machine. For this last plugin, I'm going to bring them all back in. And we're going to take a look at FGX. Now this, it's a mastering processor and it does exactly that. It just finishes the track for me. I've got the FG comp on there. I like to go quite steady here. So this is at a ratio of 1.5 to 1. And I'm just bringing the threshold down until it's kind of tickling the 1-2 dB of gain reduction. I like to have a relatively kind of mid attack. Typically, I'll go for something a bit slower if I'm really bringing the threshold down. But here, I'm just taming the transients a touch. And then I've always got a fast release there. Not the fastest, but fairly fast. And it's just great for adding some extra level at the end and some overall loudness. I like to bring up my dynamic perception to around 2. Let's just listen to it. Let's just hear what it does, because it's just phenomenal. It adds so much of that finishing sound to the mix, before and after. Here we go.
Oh, it takes a man to know when something's done. I clung to you like I'm the only one. You come and go, but life is not a one-night show. It's not over till I'm done.
So with all those plugins on, that is my final piece in my chain. That mix bus is so important to me because that is where everything comes together and I can add that cohesion, that word that I keep using. And that is what Slate Digital means to me. It's adding that element of cohesion to a mix. It just brings it all together. Especially with FGX, because we have all the mastering metering as well. If we need to add a load of gain to it, if we need to bring it up to a commercial standard because we're not sending it to a mastering engineer, we can do that. And we can master it for ourselves. We can bring up that overall level. And with the EQ, with the saturation, with the compressor, we can add that mastering processing. And every time, this is my set and forget setting for FGX. I know that I'm going to just tickle the compressor just to bring down the transients a touch. I'm going to bring up some of that detail in the transients so that although they're not poking through, you can just hear the clarity in them. And then dynamic perception, I'm bringing up as well. So I get more punch in those drums, in the vocal, and in the guitar. I love it. It's on every single mix. Thanks so much for checking it out. These are 5 bus processing tips that you can use in your mixes, whatever the genre. You can bring up loads of extra bottom end to your bass using that earth module. You can add so much more clarity to your drums, your rhythm track, your percussion tracks, anything with that bomber. And then the vocal doubler is just mind-blowing. In choruses, it's going to add such a great element of dimension and clarity to your vocal. And then the mastering stuff, it's just beyond me. It just sounds fantastic. I'm using it on every single mix. You should check it out. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you take a look at the rest of the channel, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.